day and are enjoying a great Boxing Day. This video I've aptly named the overdosed earwax for anyone nursing a hangover from yesterday. So this patient attended and they should have really come a lot sooner, but they've been using earwax drops for several weeks in the hope that it would have eradicated their problem. Earwax drops don't dissolve earwax. All they do, they can break earwax up, they can disperse it, but it doesn't dissolve it. So when it breaks the wax up, it's still inside the ear canal, it's just in smaller pieces. And earwax drops soften earwax. If you overuse earwax drops, what can happen is it can exacerbate your symptoms, which is what's happened in this case. The wax absorbs the drops and it swells and expands and it creates an even more blocked ear. In addition, with this particular client, when they were using the drops, they weren't draining the ear after instilling the drops. And don't really blame the patient actually, because the earwax drops manufacturers are not very clear in their guidance. This is what I explain to my patients anyway, whenever I advise my patients to use earwax drops, I do so in the following manner. I advise my patient to position their head and their body so the ear that they're putting the drops in is facing the ceiling. Then fill up the ear with the drops that they're using. The types of drops that we recommend depend on your individual ear, but as a general rule of thumb, I normally recommend olive oil drops. I sometimes also recommend sodium bicarbonate drops, more so for people who have dead skin conditions like keratosis obturans. Soak the ear completely for 5 minutes. Really be generous with the amount of drops you put in. Let it rest for 5 minutes, and then after 5 minutes, tilt your head in the opposite way so the ear is now facing the floor. And then put a tissue underneath. That will help drain the drops so it doesn't collect in your ear, and it can also help flush out any wax that's built up inside your ear. You can't clean your ears using water, so that's bad for you. So in essence, you're flushing your ears using olive oil drops. The contralateral ear, so the opposite ear, don't do the same night, do that the following night, because if you do that straight away, when it comes to draining your second ear, some of the drops in the first ear may seep back into the ear canal alongside with it some earwax. So that's just a little tip, guys. And what excessive use of drops can do, it can make the skin really wrinkly in the ear canal. This is what's happened in this case. So we've cleared most of the blockage. We're just working on the eardrum now. The eardrum is visible, the patient's symptoms have dramatically improved, but you can see the patient's got a lot of embedded and dead keratin on the eardrum. And some of the wax is stained as well. The staining of the earwax is more apparent in the second ear, so do stay tuned for that. The patient can hear, they could barely hear anything when they came in, they couldn't even hear the suction machine, and at this stage they could, so it's made a dramatic improvement. But you can see what's happened, the patient hadn't drained their ear, the wax has got soft and runny and it's trickled down towards the eardrum, and it's rested on the eardrum, it's also rested in the inferior recess. So just where I am now, near the eardrum, about ½ centimetre away from the eardrum narrows and it widens again, and it creates recesses all the way around. The most prominent recess is the inferior, so at the bottom it's almost like a trench, and there's one anterior, so in this case to the left hand side of the eardrum, and that's the anterior recess. So it's like a little ridge, and the wax can settle. Similarly, if you get water in your ears, water can settle in this ridge, both in the inferior recess or the anterior recess, and affect your hearing. It's so difficult to get access. Now with an endoscope we can visualise inside that recess. With an otoscope or microscope you may not be able to, but I'm very pleased with that. So I can see the whole eardrum. The rest of the dead skin will naturally now shed. It's not ready to be removed, it's still quite thick, and that's just unfortunately excessive use of the drops. The drops has almost dissolved and decomposed this outer layer of skin that's coating the eardrum, and I've got the majority of it out. If we got any more out, it would have been very uncomfortable. We may have perforated the eardrum, which is the last thing we want to do, guys. I got all the soft wax out of the inferior recess and anterior recess so the patient can hear a lot better. We're now on to the patient's right ear, and again this ear has been overdosed with earwax drops. We call the process of using earwax drops somnoliosis. I'll say that slowly. I'm not a very good pronunciator of words, but cerumenolosis. That's hopefully that's broke it down into the little syllables, and you can see there's a bit of keratin at the top. So, and there's different types of drops. This patient had been using a combination of drops ranging from olive oil drops, which is my preferred type of drops for the majority of my patients, sodium bicarbonate drops, and also hydrogen peroxide drops. They're the three main categories. Olive oil drops is slightly acidic, which matches the pH of the ear canal. The ear canal is also slightly acidic, as is the pH of wax. The ear canal, generally, the pH should range from 5.8 to 7 pH, and earwax is roughly, I think, about 6.5, somewhere in that region, but it is slightly acidic. So olive oil is a similar pH to the ear canal, so it doesn't have, people are less likely to have an allergic reaction to it. Olive oil can also lubricate and moisturize the skin that lines the ear canal, preventing it from drying and cracking. And also what olive oil does, it binds the wax together, so when it does come to being removed via suction, it comes out in big chunks. Both sodium bicarbonate drops and hydrogen peroxide drops, they're alkaline, so it changes the pH of the ear canal from an acidic to an alkaline pH, which then increases the likelihood of developing an allergic reaction to the drops, and can also lead to an infection, because the acidity, the natural acidity of the ear is believed to inhibit certain fungal and bacterial growth, and if you're turning the pH of the ear canal from an acidic pH to an alkaline, it gives rise for these fungals, spores and different bacteria to multiply and breed inside your ear canal. Also, both hydrogen peroxide and sodium bicarbonate drops are water-based, and water is bad for the ear. Bacterial and fungal and different funguses, fungal spores love damp, warm, dark places. That's where they love to breed. So by introducing water in the ear through these drops, you can develop swimmer's ear, which is an infection due to water, and that's because bacteria and fungal, it's a perfect breeding ground. So that's my kind of overview of the different types of drops. And again, with this ear, the patient didn't drain the ear. They actually allowed the drops, the head was tilted, I think, overnight. The drops softened the wax, and the wax has drizzled further down the ear canal onto the eardrum. And we're just in the anterior recess there. As I mentioned in the previous year, you've got an inferior and anterior recess. And look at that view. This is the view we can get with an endoscope. It's very hard to achieve the same view with an otoscope or head loops or microscope. And I'm using a fine end gauge, and I've just bent the tip so I can get access, and it's just an amazing view. These types of procedures probably appeal more to the audiologist because it's more of a technical procedure. It may not, in terms of viewing pleasure, I'm not sure, you can tell me as a viewer how good it is in terms of viewing, but as a technical point of view, I really enjoy these types of videos because it's a bit more technically challenging. And you just saw there, I kind of went onto the eardrum and it kind of flexed slightly. That's fine, the eardrum's quite robust. It's only 1 millimetre thick, so it doesn't mean we can really poke into the ear hard, but it has got some resistance, and quite often I'm on people's eardrums and I'm delicately removing, suctioning wax off, and they don't even notice. So, but at the same time, we have to be very gentle. If I go in and prod and poke too hard, I'm going to perforate that eardrum, and that's why, for me, it's more technically challenging. That's why I like these types of videos. I can appreciate, in terms of viewing, it's still a bit messy, it's a bit stained, but we're not going to remove every little speck of wax, guys. Some of this is staining. So if you imagine, well, you've had your Christmas lunch, you had all that gravy on the plate, you can finish the plate in terms of the roast potato, your sprouts, your turkey, your pigs in blankets, your veg, but you're still going to have gravy unless you lick the plate clean, which, well, I sometimes do, I'm guilty as charged. That plate is still going to be stained with gravy, and as I said, the only way you can do that is by licking it. Now, I'm not going to go inside this patient's ear and lick their eardrum, and you can't obviously suction it all off because it's just stained. And in terms of irrigation and syringing, you really want to avoid that. Water, as I said, can cause infection. If you're irrigating the ear or syringing it, you're putting unnecessary force pressure into the onto the eardrum. You could perforate it purely through that action, and it gives rise to infection. So I'm nearly done. I think it's just a bit left in the anteriors. I'm just seeing if I can get a bit more out. And there's a point where we have to stop. We think, well, this is going to, I don't want to risk perforating that eardrum, so I'm happy with what I'm doing, and that's all that matters really. And this will all dry up now and naturally migrate out the ear. Let's just see how much more I can get from the anterior recess. So I think I've just called it a day there, but much, much better than before. The patient in here, very happy that we could fit her in before Christmas. I, again, wish everyone's had a great Christmas and you're having a wonderful Boxing Day. Make the most of it. I know it's been a tough year for everyone, and hopefully 2021 will be a lot better for everywhere in the world.